Well, thank you very much. I'm greatly honored to be here and quite amazed to find out that there are more people like myself who are into pro bono work, which sometimes can be very rewarding, but most time is thankless job. I think that when I look at my own life as a human rights defender, I find that pro bono work is probably the toughest public service for any human rights defender to perform. And the reason is because we are working with multiple but diverse contact points. We have clientele that are underserved and sometimes unskilled, and therefore to be able to get the story out of a client sometimes even take longer than when you write down a petition, because there may be crucial points that they forget to tell you, which are important in a lawyer's mind to present the case. And then we have judges who are highly skilled, but often isolated and dispassionate. And law, which at least in my country, we have to work within the law, which defies sometimes even common sense, and is not poor-friendly. We have to deal with bar associations because you're competing with lawyers and you're working with lawyers. So you have to take the sense with you and to promote that sense within the community as well. I think that to work as a pro bono lawyer, to fight for rule of law, and to fight for non-discrimination without having the bar association not understand what you're doing is tougher, is more difficult. And I always tell my colleagues, be in the mainstream of the law. I have the advantage that I am a private practicing lawyer, plus I give my services as a pro bono lawyer as well. So I'm very much a part of the bar associations as well. But I can assure you that it was not easy to get the bar to recognize that there can be discrimination against women. Because every time you talk to them about discrimination against women, they would certainly deny it. And the pat answer would be, well, our religion gives most equality to women. And these are the cliches that I've heard all my life. Then we are also looking at public opinion. As a human rights lawyer, you may be fighting against death penalty, but public opinion is not with you. So you have to gradually also expand your sphere of influence in terms of ideas and build the public opinion that you want. And lastly, but not more importantly, you take the risks, because a pro bono lawyer also ends up taking cases that other lawyers will not touch. These are often these are risky, and they are unpopular issues, particularly when it comes to national security, when it comes to religion. They pose certain risks to the lawyers who take on these causes. I also believe that pro bono work is a very personalized work, in the sense that it's not like a factory, and it can never be a factory, because the comfort that a client must have with the lawyer is very important. You cannot tell a lawyer that when you walk into the office, you can only get this lawyer, cannot tell your client, sorry, that you can only get this lawyer to do your case. They must have a choice. They must be comfortable with the lawyer. Then there are other issues with people who work in the legal aid area. There are long hours of work, and I often tease many of my other colleagues who work in NGOs that we don't have a Saturday off, and we hardly have a Sunday off. There is also make no mistake theory that we always tell our colleagues, because like a doctor, you cannot experiment with your clientele. And this, I find, is absolutely essential. because I have often seen that there's a tendency to look at a case and want to take it without having the skills to take it. There is a tendency of not having discussion about your case, of not going to a senior lawyer and asking, what is it? How can I go about it? And I think these are important issues that we always constantly raise in our law firm at least. Timing is strategic. And the reason I say that is that there was a time when somebody went and filed a case on the basis of non-discrimination against a very perverse law which discriminated against religious minorities. And we knew that this was a time when there was a heightened era where Ziaul Haq was promoting Islamization. And you also know that the judges are all hand-picked. And these are hand-picked judges who have no spine, who are opportunists. And I was of the view, like many others, that this is not the time to take this case to the Supreme Court. Because once you have the stamp of the Supreme Court saying that this is not a case of discrimination, you cannot go back to it again, at least for a good 2 decades. Therefore, timing is strategic and essential. It is also important that we must understand and must make other people understand that we cannot win every case. And this is particularly so when funders come and they want to see outcomes. Now, for outcomes, in our law firm, we do a lot of family cases, and the outcome is 99%, which pleases them no end. You know, that you will always get divorced if you ask for a divorce. But it is difficult to win all cases. And if you don't win your case, you can still put the cause on the agenda. For a legal aid or pro bono work, I find that it is very useful to have a precise mandate so that you are not having everybody come in for all kinds of diverse legal issues. I mean, for example, we have prisoners, women, children, death penalty, religious minorities, bonded labor, family law, gender discrimination, torture, disappearances, arbitrary detention, persons with disability. But if you look at the mandate, eventually there are only 3 areas of law that all of these touch, which is criminal law, family law, and constitutional law. It's not civil law, it's not property law. So therefore, you can have a wider mandate, but which is packed into 3 strands of law, which or areas of law, so that you have your expertise there. And a pro bono lawyer is basically an activist that is using different tools, but not abandoning other tools. For example, a pro bono lawyer will always be in the forefront of legal reforms. Institution building, giving expert opinions, building a constituency of civil society that does understand the legal technicalities and the sensitivities of reforms within the law. And you still have to do advocacy, you still have to do monitoring. So therefore, I think that it is important for us as pro bono lawyers to realize that our work simply is not going to court and fighting a case. I will give you only 2 or 3 examples of cases that I've done because I can see that my time is running out. I think one of the cases that taught me a lot of lessons was my work with the bonded labor. It first taught me that judges were actually not sensitive about poverty. I actually had judges tell me, you have brought in too many people in court and they stink. And I had to immediately say it, and I didn't want to say it, just came out like that, and I said, this is why you're here. Unless you don't smell the stink, you will not know that people live in poverty in this country as well. And when the bar associations began to see hundreds and hundreds of people come in with cases, saying that we are under bondage, with torn clothes, and the employers saying that they owe them millions of rupees, it was a kind of, it was irony in that sense. And people said, this whole family doesn't cost 100 rupees because they are so poor. And you're saying that they owe you 1,000,000 rupees cannot be, and it cannot be correct. And then finally, this case went on to the Supreme Court. And I found that it was, for me, the most important case because I saw empowerment right in front of my eyes. I saw women who used to shudder, who used to tremble when they saw their employer stand in court. But by the time they were in the Supreme Court, I saw the same woman put her hand on the hip and tell her employer, do what you want. I have brought you to the highest court in this country, and I will defeat you too. And this was a time when everybody began to realize, who were in bondage, that they were actually in bondage. They did not even know that they were. They were guilty of owing money, not realizing that this was exploitation. And while this case was going on, hundreds of them started to come to listen to this case. And that is when the unions were made, and strong unions across the country. They were able to negotiate their wages. They were able to negotiate what law they wanted, and the government had to make a law to reduce or to eliminate bonded labor. And this is not the only case, but I have also seen, for example, in my own experience, I believe that as lawyers, we have a tendency to come in when the damage is done. But as lawyers, we must also look at prevention. For example, if a woman is about to be killed, she begins to feel that there is danger to her life. She can tell, and you must have faith in your client or in the person who reaches out to you. That is a time that we have to go and do something to prevent it, not after it's been done, to say we'll get the dead woman justice. That is important, but to my mind, far more important is prevention. And I saw that I had a case where a woman who was 22-year-old had got married against the wishes of her parents, and the parents had come to drag her out of my office. And believe me, that while all my male colleagues hid, there were the women lawyers, it was the women lawyers and women employees of the office who stood up to the gangsters who came into the office, picked up the chairs and were hitting them back. But we did not let them take this girl away. And this case went on for 2 years in the High Court of Pakistan to determine whether an adult woman could get married on her own will or not, while this girl was kept in a custody home, virtually imprisoned. And it wasn't that the judges didn't know what the law was. It was that the judges were angry that women were asserting themselves. So there is a lot of bias within the judiciary itself, which lawyers must begin to point out, to challenge, and not to accept. And so finally, after 2 years, the judgment came. 3 judges were on the bench, 2 decided in our favor, 1 against us, and the case went on to the Supreme Court and so on and so forth. There are a number of other cases that I've done which have been risky. For example, blasphemy cases, where lawyers wouldn't take cases of blasphemy. And that, I think, is a vital responsibility of a pro bono lawyer, where people are left without anybody to defend them. I knew the risks involved. I still do them. I almost got killed twice because of this. But I believe that it is important to do it. My last point, because I know that I have only 1 minute left, is the dilemma that a pro bono lawyer also faces. For example, during times of emergency. Yes, there is terrorism in our country, and I myself have been victim of terrorism, but I will still fight the case of a person who is denied due process. So the question comes, what are you, Mrs. Jahangir? You're defending terrorists in military courts, but terrorists must go to military courts. Or, for example, freedom of expression. Why should anybody get up and say something that is against national interest? But I believe that even a devil has a right to speak up. And so it's not a question of whom you're defending, but it's a question of what you're defending. And that is very important to recognize and to understand and to explain to others. But I'm afraid that a lawyer's world is such, and life is such, and work is such, that it becomes very difficult to explain to people that I do not defend only Mother Teresa's. I defend rule of law. I want to promote human rights and protect human rights, not protect an individual who may have committed a crime, but protect the idea that even a criminal has a right, even a prisoner has a right. And these are dilemmas that we will always go through, but these are precisely the kind of public education that we must constantly be hammering, constantly be explaining, because that will make the society mature, and more particularly, a mature civil society is where we will be able to enhance our intellectual depth and indeed prosper. So I wish you all well. I can assure you that pro bono work also brings back its own rewards, not just in terms of spiritually, because I can tell you that my clients who are very poor, they will bring me 3 eggs, a little chicken, and that for me it's so important. But also it gives you the experience that no other lawyer has had. And so when I look at myself, not just as a pro bono lawyer, but also as a private lawyer, and I'm perhaps not the first run, but now the second run in my country, I look back and I think that I have learned all this, and the struggle came because I had people who came to me in times of need, and I had to find creative ways of saving them. So I wish you well. Thank you very much.